After many years, the Chavism party maybe is facing its final days. One country and two leaders. Venezuela, a country on the verge of humanitarian, social, and economic crisis, is stuck in war between two presidents. Many countries have recognized the leader of the opposition, Juan Guaido, as the interim president of Venezuela, putting Maduro under pressure. Will Russia and China keep supporting Maduro against the United States? Will Maduro step down? If yes, how would be the future of this Latin American country? We explore those questions here today on Mystery and Politics.
One country, two leaders. Nicolas Maduro. Juan Guaido. Venezuela, a country on the verge of humanitarian, social, and economic crisis, is stuck in tug-of-war between two presidents. A country known for its strong democracy in late 90s is now struggling to have a stable government. It all started after Hugo Chávez's 15-year-long rule ended with his death, and his disciple Nicolas Maduro assumed power and became president of Venezuela in 2013. And that's when dark days of Venezuela began. Venezuela's inflation rate increased from 19% in 2013 to 946% in 2017, and country's GDP also significantly dropped from 2,091 in 2013 to 1,355 in 2017, and murders and crime rate has constantly risen, making Venezuela one of the most dangerous countries in the world. This has forced almost 19% of population to live in poverty and face severe food, medicine, and electricity shortages. Maduro, on the other hand, has blamed opposition backed by the United States and Western nations of launching an economic war against him in the country.
Hay una amenaza. No puedo decir hoy que haya un riesgo. Hay una amenaza que empezó en agosto del año 2018. Fue la primera vez que Trump habló de una intervención militar a Venezuela.
The crisis escalated in the beginning of January, when the relatively unknown Juan Guaido first gained prominence when he became the head of the National Assembly.
Que en consecuencia, esta Asamblea Nacional como único poder legítimo electo por los venezolanos asuma la representación del pueblo.
On January 23rd, he swore himself in as interim president of Venezuela in front of thousands of supporters.
Asumir formalmente las competencias del Ejecutivo Nacional como el presidente encargado de Venezuela.
In South American countries like Colombia, Brazil, and Peru gave their prompt support to Guaido. But his most notable supporter, however, was the United States.
Pence, the Vice President of the United States. The United States supports the courageous decision by Juan Guaido, the President of your National Assembly, to assert that body's constitutional powers, declare Maduro a usurper, and call for the establishment of a transitional government.
On the other hand, countries like Russia, China, and Turkey have extended their support to Maduro. And Maduro isn't giving up without a fight and has condemned the United States and accused them of planning a military coup against him.
Un golpe de Estado que pretende intervenir la vida política, echar de un lado la soberanía de Venezuela e instaurar un régimen títere a los intereses del imperio estadounidense y de sus aliados del mundo occidental.
However, the living conditions have forced over 3.6 million Venezuelans to flee the borders and find shelter in other countries for food, water, and medicine. This has made Maduro extremely unpopular among people, and according to a survey by Reuters, 80% of Venezuelans want Maduro out of power. What's next in this crisis is unknown. But what's known is in this crisis for power, millions of lives are at stake.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Mystery and Politics. Today we have through Skype Mr. Lajos Szászdi, who is the professor at Interamerican University from Puerto Rico, and Mr. Rony Curvelo, who is a political commentator from Miami, United States. Mr. Szászdi, we start with you. What is the cause of the Venezuelan crisis? Is all about Maduro?
Well, no, I wouldn't say that Maduro was the cause of the current crisis. I would separate two types of crisis. The latest one that has become international, an internationalized crisis of Venezuela, which began after President Nicolás Maduro swore his second term on January 10th of this year, and then that was followed by deputy or member of the National Assembly, member of Parliament, Juan Guaido, one of the leaders of the opposition, as everybody well knows, know that he declared he was president of Venezuela. Of course, my impression is that the National Assembly, controlled by the opposition, appointed him, but apparently there was no vote. He was also elected by the National Assembly, president of the National Assembly, in the hands of the opposition, but that decision was, I believe, considered void, null and void by the judiciary or the executive power of Venezuela. Of course, the opposition would say that the judiciary is under the control of the executive. The president of Venezuela and his government would say, no, that's not the case. So it's a complicated situation, but that would be the most recent crisis when the internal political crisis of Venezuela was internationalized. It became an international affair, and to a great extent by the United States, and its allies or its satellites, I would say. And when I say satellites...
Mr. Curvelo, as you hear, Mr. Szászdi says that Maduro is not responsible for the crisis in Venezuela and all is about the foreign plan to overthrow Maduro. Do you agree with that?
Well, that statement makes kind of laugh because remember that Venezuela decreased the growth by 50% in as far as the economy concerned is more serious than was Cuba during the special period, or the Soviet Union. So the situation in Venezuela is worse than anything anywhere in the world. Not only the economy, and because of the economy, the people are suffering. Who to blame? Who are to blame? The United States, Brazil, the international community. We have to blame the leader who make the wrong decisions. The petroleum, which is, remember, Venezuela is supposed to be a very rich country, and the production was reduced by 28% last year. So everything is a chaos, and that is called management. And we cannot blame the progressist ideas or the leftist ideas or socialist idea, because you have to remember that at the same time that Venezuela is going down the tubes, you have Bolivia. They have the same kind of system. They are not only friends, but they have the same kind of ideas in order to run a country. And Bolivia, and the other way, went up. They are growing every single year with the same concept of government. So we have to blame a man that is not capable he's not only him, but his crew, everybody that is around him, are not ready to run a country, and that's why Venezuela is going down the tubes and will continue.
So, Mr. Szászdi, you don't blame Maduro, and you are saying that it's all about Russia and U.S. rewarding even the economic crisis, correct?
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. But yes, but it is a far complicated issue, and I can help to explain it. It's a very long issue, but let's try to compartmentalize. First of all, I believe that the economic crisis probably was caused in part due to the fact that the late President Hugo Chavez, he was very generous in trying to help other countries and societies, as the city of London or Harlem, the neighborhood of Harlem in New York, with subsidized or free oil. In some cases, they were helping the economies of Cuba, of Nicaragua, with, I believe, highly subsidized or free oil. In other case, or in exchange, well, as they say, for the work of Cuban doctors or educators, teachers. What happened? Well, when the oil prices were high, that appeared to be possible that they could export a lot of oil from Venezuela. I think over 90% of their earnings in hard currency from their exports were from oil. But at the same time, perhaps they neglected to keep, to accumulate, to how would I say it? Because English is not my first language, but to store, accumulate hard currency from those exports of oil for the bad days. Because the day, well, some people believe that these issues of high oil prices, low oil prices are cyclical. But there are certainly periods of bonanza when the prices of oil are high, and there are periods when the prices of oil are low, and that's when less money reaches the coffers of the state, in this case Venezuela.
Mr. Curvelo, he says that the low price of oil is the main cause of crisis or economic crisis in Venezuela. Do you agree with that?
Well, Venezuela is, of course, the main source supposed to be the oil, and the main excuse for Maduro is that. But remember, Venezuela, they have so many different sources of income, and not only the petroleum. The thing is, Maduro did not haven't done a diversification of the economy, and because of that, the situation that comes with management. Could you imagine if Maduro only depends on the oil to subsist? So means that if without the petroleum, without the oil, the Venezuela is close the doors and that's it. We don't have any country anymore. Venezuela had passed by economic struggles on the history of the country for many times, and they were able to survive because there was somebody in the country that had some kind of a management skills. At the same time that we looking for management skills from Maduro, that he totally, we know now that he doesn't have any. At the same time that we're looking for that, we see this guy going on television or going on regular basis saying that he speaks with birds, because he see on the birds the president, the live president Chavez. So this guy is not ready to be a president, and this is a shameful, because remember, Venezuela was for once the best democracy in Latin America, was one very stable country, and that was not because of the oil, the petroleum, was because they had like all the institutions were working.
Mr. Szászdi, why you oppose Guaido?
My problem with Guaido is that I believe that he's just receiving orders from the United States. He's a tool of the United States. He is not really a representative, legitimate president. Now, is Maduro the one? No, I don't think so. We don't have anyone. What will be the solution? Perhaps that, but I believe that, well, there were other for, and Maduro have a sort of, well, I would say the dictatorship, communist dictatorship. But I wouldn't replace him just like that by a tool of the United States. And I believe that's what Juan Guaido is. He's serving the interests of the U.S., not of the Venezuelan people. Now, Guaido, I'm sure he believes he's doing it for Venezuela. I do believe he's an agent of influence that is unaware that he's being utilized by the U.S. government for their purposes. But in any case, whether he's aware or not, he is, by being a tool of Washington, I don't think that's a better option.
Mr. Curvelo, do you agree that Guaido is a puppet of United States and doesn't serve the interests of Venezuelan people?
Well, if you go in that idea, you could say then that Maduro is a puppet of the president of Russia's president. You could say that he is also puppet of Cuba. Could say that he is puppet of China. The fact is, Cuba, China, and Russia supports him, and Guaido are supported by another 50 countries. So let's call accusation, or it's just though doesn't fit. It doesn't. Each one got the support from different groups.
Mr. Szászdi, have you seen the perspective of the situation in Venezuela? Will Maduro step down?
There are no magic solutions. The conflict in Venezuela is an internal one. I know that to say that to solve it internally, that my view will be that should be the only option. And I know that for the opposition, it's like almost an impossible task. They will not be able to change the government because Maduro is not going to let them do it. He's going to try to be eternal, well, as long as he lives at least. But that's something Bolivarian. Simon Bolivar, the father of the Republic of Venezuela, he promoted the idea of life president for the constitution of Bolivia that was baptized after Simon Bolivar. That was, of course, in the 1820s, I know. But nonetheless, the idea of a lifetime president is not new and is rooted in the history of Venezuela too, because of Simon Bolivar. But
Rony Curvelo, we are out of time. Please tell us briefly, what's your opinion about the future of Venezuela and Maduro?
It's very hard because in politics, it's like the skies. Every time that you look to the clouds, they have a different format. They have a different shape. It keeps moving very fast. So this is how politics works. So we don't know. I can't predict it because we're not dealing with somebody. They are reasonable. He's not in his better state of mind. So we don't know what happens unless he takes in the future he takes a path that for survival. So because when you're getting very close to an end. You may have you have to make a decision to survive. So perhaps that will be the path that he takes in the future. But remember, unless he lost the support of the army, which is not that big deal, because Venezuela army can be defeated by anyone, even Brazil that has a very terrible army. If he gets close to that, which I hope not, he will step down. But until he has the support of Russia and China, and even though and also with the support of Russia and China, the economy of Venezuela hasn't done any better. So not even with the support of China, that usually, remember that, let me tell this because this is very interesting. Brazil in 2008, 9, and 10 were growing before that by 2.5–3% a year. In some other years, negative, but the most of they're doing was 3 points, the GDP. When China went to 11% a year in GDP, Brazil went to 7%. In other words, Brazil had a boom because China was buying a lot from Brazil. China, our friends, is a good friend of Venezuela, and had a lot of money, a lot of investment. There are a lot of money to invest everywhere in the world. They're investing tons of money in Brazil. And why China is not investing in Venezuela, or whatever money they are investing in Venezuela, since they are friends, is not changing the economy. So it's not a matter of investment, it's a matter of management. And this is what's happening in Venezuela.
Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Lajos Szászdi, the professor at Interamerican University from Puerto Rico, and Mr. Curvelo, a political commentator from Miami, United States.